What's up, everybody? Back again, another episode of CMA podcast. Today is a very, very special day. I guess the theme should be Ask and You Shall Receive. I was racking my brain as to how I was going to get guests on this show, and I realized that I've got plenty of fighter friends back home, plenty of fighter friends scattered around on social media, plenty of fighter friends here in Switzerland. So I've just started asking around, and I just remember how when I went to UFC 93 as a fight fan with no fight experience at all, like I was just a UFC fan. I didn't know how to throw a jab. I didn't know what an armbar was. I just knew that the violence was appealing. So I went to UFC 93, and I think I told this story on another podcast where I got really lucky in the sense that I found the fighter hotel, and I just remember how accessible and friendly and forthcoming all the fighters were when I was there. So I'm friends with a few fighters on Facebook, and I reached out to Marcus Davis, former UFC vet. I think he's something like 15 fights in the UFC, and I'd met him at UFC 93. He came to Waterford in the southeast of Ireland to do a seminar, and I attended that. Was really cool each time I met him. And I just, sent him a message on Facebook, and he responded saying, yeah, I'd love to. All right, cool. So I got a guest today, and he is a former UFC fighter. Go check him out on social media. Go YouTube his highlight reel on YouTube. It's insane. Marcus Davis, the Irish hand grenade. So that's who we talked to today. Really cool conversation. A great guy. I'm sure we'll have him on again. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one. It was really cool for me. Marcus, the Irish hand grenade Davis, in the house. Thank you very much for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
Amazing. I'm a huge fan of yours, man. And the reason I reached out to you this week, I have a lot of fighters. I have a lot of boxers in the gym who ask me on a regular basis, who do I look up to? Who do I see as an influence? And everyone has like their mainstream guys. You talk about the Conor McGregors, the John Joneses, Ronda Rousey. They're all the common names. But when you are an old school fan like me, I was a UFC fan before I even put on a boxing glove. And I met you at UFC 93. And I was a music fan before fighting. And when I got to meet musicians, it was a case of next. But I got into the Fighters Hotel at UFC 93, and I met all the fighters, including you, and everyone was just so cool, man. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, fighters. Most, I would say, 90% of them, that fight in the UFC, they're just regular guys, man, and they don't, I never made a connection to, I never understood why somebody would want a picture with me or want me to sign anything, so, and I wasn't a big deal or anything where I grew up. Everybody was like, yeah, I know that guy, he's a dick or whatever, so it wasn't a big deal that, what I did for a living, no one really cared, so the only time that it felt like a big deal were when I was at these big UFC events or when I was in Ireland and stuff like that. And it was the one time that, when people would recognize me, it felt really, really good. So, other than that, I just kind of lived in reality.
That's awesome. And you fought overseas quite a lot because, the UK cards that's where I got to know you, because those fights on pay-per-view, they were on at regular time for us over here in Europe, So I got to see a lot of the prelims, a lot of the fights before the main event. And all of a sudden this boxing guy called Marcus Davis is on, and I don't know anything about boxing, but I love watching what this guy's doing. And you're southpaw, so I didn't really I saw a straight left coming in. I'd never seen a straight left before. But then I see when I think it was the Paul Taylor fight where you had this vicious ground and pound, and he bucked you off, and you took the arm and got an arm bar. I'm like, what's this move? I had no idea. I knew mixed martial arts was a mixture of the martial arts, but I had no idea that arm bars existed and chokes existed until I started educating myself on what UFC and MMA was actually all about.
Very similar to what happened to me, man. Just basically a little more than 10 years before that. So when I saw the first UFC in 1993, I saw it and I said, this is bullshit. Like, this is not even, how could you even grab somebody like that and pull on their arm and it hurt? Or how could you put somebody's head between your legs and squeeze it and it would hurt? I didn't have the concept of what that was. And at that time, I'd only done traditional martial arts and I'd done boxing. And so I was a pro boxer already at the time, and I was living in Boston. So I opened up the phone book and I started for internet and everything, really.
Yeah.
So I opened up the phone book and started going through and looking for the name Gracie. And then I kept calling these Gracie gyms, and they're all like, and this is in 1993. So when I'm calling them and they're saying, yeah, it's $150 an hour for a private, I'm like, you're crazy. Like, that was a lot of money to me back then. Then I finally found one that said Hickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I had no idea who Hickson was, but I knew the Gracie name. And then it said Jeet Kune Do. So I called him and he said, yeah, it's $60 an hour. And I said, all right, I'll pay that. And I went in and I walked in and it was this little short, kind of chubby guy. And I was like, oh my God, I just lost $60 to some little fat dude. And he says, let's get on the mat. And he says, have you ever trained before? And I lied and I said, no, I've never done anything. And he goes, okay. Then he proceeded to tear me apart on the mat. And he just was submitting me and choking me and putting me in arm locks and leg locks. And I was just like terrified. I was like, oh my God, because I'd always been a street fighting kid growing up and I was in fights all the time. And I'm like, you're telling me that some older dude who's out of shape could whoop my ass if he could get me on the ground. And so that's when I started to really look at MMA. And then when I returned back to Maine, I started running a nightclub and had been doing a little bit of, I've been doing judo and stuff, so not really jiu-jitsu. And then I made it mandatory that all the doormen that worked for me had to train in this new martial art thing, which was, MMA. And we would meet and we would actually we'd spar like no rules, but you would wear a motorcycle helmet and those big gloves. And we were just elbowing and hitting each other, and I'm just crazy. Well, one of my doormen was Tim Sylvia.
Oh, wow.
So I trained Tim Sylvia for a while, and then we saw that they were doing those pancrase events. So we took Tim to some pancrase events, and he won 3 of them in a row. And then we went to a UFC in New Jersey, and we met Pat Miletich, and Pat asked him if he wanted to be a sparring partner because he was so big they wanted to use him for a guy that they had named Ben Rothwell. And so he said, yeah. So Tim flew out to Iowa to Team Miletich, called me back and said, hey, I'm not coming back, man. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to try this MMA stuff out. And I said, all right. And that's how it all started.
Amazing. Wow, Tim Sylvia is like 6'6" or something, right?
Yes. When I started training him, he was 6'6", 345 pounds.
You were doing pads with him? He was probably taking your shoulders off, right?
Yeah, man. Hold pads for him, and then we would fight. Like, he'll tell you a story of when we decided to fight without the helmet on. And at that time, I was pro boxing, so I was only 155 pounds. I was really small. So he's like 2 people of me. And he ended up taking me down and getting me on the ground. So all I had in my mouth and my face was basically his hairy stomach and his belly button and everything.
Ah.
So I bit right into him. So I started biting his stomach, which obviously made him scream and then try to get off me because I'm biting him. And we went back to fighting. So that's how we were doing it back then, is that we were like thinking, what would we do, right, in a real fight? And in a real fight, if I'm caught underneath a guy like Tim Sylvia and I'm 155 pounds, I'm just going to die.
Yeah.
Unless I just start trying to eat him. And, if you eat Tim Sylvia, you got to do it like eating a horse, right? One bite at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 45 pounds of him.
That is incredible. I love those old school stories. I mean, back in the day, I've got my back in the day stories now, but they're always topped the further back you go, you know, the Wild West. And so you went through this amazing UFC career. You had fights in other promotions. You retired in 2000 and is it 17, 18? In 14. Okay. After that, and now you're the head coach. You're a head coach.
So I'm the head coach for what they call Tap Out Fitness here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm a master coach under Greg Jackson. So Greg Jackson wasn't my coach when I was an MMA fighter, but when I retired, I flew out to New Mexico just to train under him to be a coach. So I wanted to be a better coach, and I'd already been able to train with one of the best coaches in the world, which was Martialarts.
Yeah.
So Martialarts was my MMA and my Muay Thai coach. And then my education was in biomechanics and physiology. So a guy that was like my father figure was a man from Korea named Sung Oh Che, and he had a PhD in biomechanics and physiology. So he became a big influence in my life earlier on, and so that's why I kind of pushed towards that. And so when I retired, I wanted to become a really good coach, so I went through all those programs. I went through the Spencer Institute, became a biomechanics specialist, and then I got certifications, I got a nutritional certification from the Board of Education of New York, and so I did all these things. And so now here in Raleigh, North Carolina, during the day, I work as a biomechanist for a company called Core Results, and I work with people who, might be injured, or maybe they were athletes when they were younger and now they've gotten obese, or, even some people on just some nutrition and physical fitness training stuff. And then at nights, I run all the class curriculum and the programming for Tap Out Fitness, which they signed a deal with Greg Jackson to teach Greg Jackson's mixed martial arts program. So I teach that here too. So I'm pretty busy. I get up at 3:45 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and I head into town. I live about 30 minutes away from the city, and I live in the country. And then I drive into town, and I just stay in town from basically 4:30 or 5 a.m. until 7:30 at night. And then I go back home and restart everything Monday through Friday. And then Saturdays, I come into town for about 3 hours. So I have Sundays off. So I work all the time, and I like what I do. And I train, actually. I have a guy right now that I train here. He's the number one ranked both bantamweight and lightweight, or bantamweight and featherweight here in North Carolina. And they just came out with a story. It was like the top 30 prospects in the world that are not yet in the UFC. And he was the number 2 prospect for the United States. So most of them were all Eastern European, crazy Russian guys that were on that list. But his name is Adley Edwards, and he's a All-American wrestler from Ohio. So his wrestling game is unbelievable.
Cool.
And now he's become a really good striker too. So he's very well-rounded. And he just beat a kid in Kentucky when I was there. He beat the champion who just came off the contender series for the UFC, and he beat him. And so we're waiting. The UFC's already contacted him and stuff, and want him there. So we're just waiting for the call for the opponent and stuff like that.
Excellent. Wow. So you're busy with your schedule. You sent me your schedule during the week, and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to happen. He is incredibly busy. Yeah. But B, you're doing what you love, which is top of the crop. And you've got this prospect as your protege, which is phenomenal, so you're passing the torch, in other words.
Yeah, he's a good person. He's not somebody that if you met him, you would think he was an MMA fighter. He's real smart. He's college educated, and he's just a really kind nice guy, right? Whereas, you know, it is breaking that mold where, you know, you do assume that guys that are, you know, MMA fighters have the bad haircut and then the stupid tattoos and then, you know, walking around with pit bulls or whatever, but he's definitely not that guy. So he's a really, really good guy.
That's awesome. And that makes me so much happier with this conversation with who I'm going to share it with, because as I said, you're passing the torch. And the reason I'm a fan of yours is because of your attitude, how you come across in interviews, your fight style, humble in victory, humble in defeat. And now with the whole passing the torch, you're going full circle, because I'm asked on a regular basis, I said this before earlier, who do I look up to? And it's someone just like this. Like, what more does anyone want? You know what I mean? I used to fight. Say again.
I should have you talk to my wife.
You can soundbite this.
My wife likes to tell people that I'm a man boy, and that I'm not as smart as I'd like to think I am, or as good as I am. So that's why she's been grounded. We've been together for 22 years, so the long haul.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds like my wife, man. You know, we put up this fighter front, you know, Motorhead t-shirts and skinheads. I've no tattoos, but they see through us, man. They see us like little butterflies, you know.
Yeah, she
definitely
got mine up.
Amazing. I'm so happy for you, man. That's really cool. One question I was asked to ask you is with the current state of MMA. It used to be grappler versus striker. And for a long time, that faded out to whoever was more well-rounded in one aspect of the sport, like the classic grappler versus striker. Then the whole well-rounded thing came in. You got to mix it up. And whoever was better at mixing it up. And now it seems to be like the Khabibs, or with that calf kick versus Conor. One tool gets it done. I mean, that's a pretty controversial statement as it is, because that's not always the way, and MMA mats doesn't work. But what would you advise to a young fighter who's looking to come in and be one of those guys? Would you advise pick a sport, stick to it, get good at it, then go to the next one? Or would you advise go to kids or teenagers MMA and learn it all in one go?
Yeah, I think that the problem with that is that everything comes down. I'm not a group mentality person. I think that everything comes down to the individual. So when I train people, I don't train people how I would train, and I don't train people the way maybe I trained, let's say Tim Bogue. I'm not going to train Adley Edwards that way, because they're different individuals. So I look at it like you want to be able to identify what your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and obviously you're working on turning a weakness maybe not necessarily into a strength, but you're either trying to make it so it's not apparent, or you're good at hiding it, or you're good at fighting happens in basically 5 ranges of combat, right? The leg to you, so kicking range, the punch to you, so punching range, the elbow and knee to you, trapping range, grappling range, which would be chest to chest in that 50-50 hold, and then ground fighting range, fighting on the ground. So if you can somehow seamlessly skip one of those and get to the other ones or whatever, and you're really good at that, then you can hide that deficiency. So my advice to people is, you do want to embrace the whole thing as it is a one thing. It's a one technique, so you don't feel like you're switching gears from kickboxer to wrestler. It should all flow effortlessly. Like Bruce Lee said, be water. Because water can fit in the cup and it becomes the cup. Water can crash. Water can flow. Water will find the cracks. And I think that that's how you want to be in your martial arts. Is you want to be able to seamlessly be you're not necessarily grappling. You're not stuck in that. You are at the whole time. At any time, you can throw a punch, you can throw an elbow, you can do a throw, you can do a wrestling or grappling or whatever. So, and I know that we're kind of beyond that. Hey, I'm gonna go to my boxing gym today. Then I'm gonna go to my kickboxing gym and learn Muay Thai, and then I'm gonna go to my grappling gym. I think you've got to embrace the art as it is as a mixed martial art and work from there rather than. So don't get me wrong. If you do have one of those deficiencies, let's say you have a hard time, in that wrestling clinch game, you should seek out somebody who is an expert at that and see what they can do to help you with that. You know what I mean? So that you can get better in that thing. But as far as your main discipline should be refining your technique and adding when you're not in a actual fight camp, adding new tools, and then constantly looking to improve with what you currently have. If you're already fighting, that's how I would look at it.
Excellent. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Because as I said, what would work for one teenager may not work for the other, or someone in their early 20s looking at like I started when I was 25, so I was very late to the party, but I know quite a few in my gym, 19, 20 years of age, boxers, but want to do MMA, is it too late for them? It's not too late for them, but I don't think they should just go to jiu-jitsu now. They should maybe mix it all up. I don't know. But it's...
if there was somebody who was more of a boxer, right, what I would do is, they're going to now try to fight on the ground. I would have them first spend more of their time learning, more of the freestyle and folk style kind of like wrestling stuff, so that you can, so you do have the option to either, because the wrestlers are the ones that are going to dominate the ability to either take it down to the ground or keep it standing, because you learn both how to do the takedown and how to defend the takedown. So, where in jiu-jitsu you really don't. I know that that's going to piss some people off, but you really don't. If you go to a jiu-jitsu school, how many jiu-jitsu schools do you go into and actually see them spending time shooting double legs, single legs, high crotches, putting in whizzers, sprawling, doing all that? They already start on the ground, most of them, right? So, you need that. But if I was a boxer, the first thing I'd want to do is know how to take somebody down and how to stop the takedown, and then get that balance and the base and the awareness and the reactions to be able to there's obviously a timing and a range management that happens when somebody's shooting, right? There's a timing to where my hands are my first line of defense, then my elbows, now my hips, and trying to keep my hips and my legs away. That's the stuff you got to learn first, and then you're sinking the rest of your time into learning more of the sweeps and standing up, not looking for the submissions necessarily. And the reason why is because a submission is something that I would use when I haven't been able to get back up to my feet and they're trying to hold me down or something like that, maybe diving on a submission. Because if your main discipline is boxing, that's where you're trying to be. Perfect example is if you look at my record. I retired with more wins by submission than anything else.
Yeah.
It's the most things that were submissions. And the reason why is because everybody was trying to take me down. And because whenever I would try to get up, they would break their own posture or balance or whatever, trying to forcefully keep me down, and a lot of times it left an opening, or in some sort of scramble I was able to jump on a neck or an arm or something, and I was able to finish. So that's the way I would kind of look at it, if I'm talking to somebody who's just a boxer like I was.
I hear you, absolutely. And the Paul Taylor fight is a classic example of that. You were doing some vicious ground and pound, full mount. He bucked and gave you his back, and then it kind of slid off, took the arm. Beautiful, beautiful fight. But yeah, one final question before I let you go. I don't want to take any more of your time because I know how busy you are. With all that's happening in the sport nowadays, will you fight again?
Yeah, it's crazy that you asked this because about I think it was maybe 2 years ago. I've been being chased by this female promoter. There's a company up here called Premier Fight League, and I think they're on like Access TV or they're on something here in the U.S. It surprises people, but I don't really watch any of it because I'm too busy working and then I'm sleeping. So, but she convinced me to come out. We went back and forth on dollar figures, and I was like, listen, there's no reason for me to come out. I'm happy with my retirement. I'm not, I make great money and I have a good life, and it was a pretty good offer, and so then I was going to do it, and then Corona happened, and it got canceled about 3 months from it was supposed to happen. The government actually shut it down and told them that they wouldn't let them have it. So
Wow.
then, the last 2 years have gone by, and she literally reached out to me last weekend and wants me to try to come out. And so we're in discussions. So I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, and I'm also not going to say it is. The guy that she wants me to fight, I think, is an undefeated pro boxer who fights in MMA now, and he only has 2 losses on his record, but he's on like a 6-fight win streak or something. So it's a tough guy, which would be tough, to be friggin' 48 years old and come out of retirement after not fighting for 6 years. But one thing I do, when I was training Tim Boach here for the past few years before he retired, I was sparring with Tim Boach all the time. Like, he'll tell you that, during camp, I was one of his main sparring partners. And then here with these guys, too, I'm rolling up, grappling, and and I actually competed here in the U.S. I'm not I never competed in sport, jiu-jitsu, or grappling, but I got asked to compete in a thing called the Toro Cup, and they said they only had one guy for me, and it was a guy named Brian Edwards, who was 6'4", 240, and a 2-time world no-gi champion and a 200-time gold medalist.
Not a bad record.
Why not? I said, let's go, let's do it. So I competed against him, and this was 2 years ago, and I submitted him in 8 minutes. And everybody said, won't happen. There's no way that this guy, everybody that was there was telling everybody, this is crazy. Who the hell is this old guy? And they'd never even heard of me. And I was training SWAT teams, and I still do every now and then here in North Carolina. I train what's called the North Carolina Tactical Office Association, because I used to be in law enforcement too. And so they came to watch it, and they're all like telling them, oh, it's the Irish hand grenade. They're like, who? And they were like, yeah, he was a UFC fighter. And they were all like, he's going to get killed. They're like, this guy is like a world champion. He beat Saulo Ribeiro, who's like, I guess a legend in jiu-jitsu or something. And then when I submitted him, everybody's in shock. So it's not like, I've stopped training at all or whatever. And if I take my shirt off, I look like, if we cut my head off and you just look at me with my shirt off, I look like I'm a 20-year-old. I don't look like I'm a 48-year-old dude. So
I love it. Well, first of all, let me tell you how happy it makes me to know that you're a retired fighter who doesn't have to, struggle, and that you're happy with what you've got, that you've got money in the bank, that you're satisfied, and you're doing what you love. But if you successfully negotiated with a new promoter to come out of retirement, I would imagine that figure is pretty nice, and that makes me even happier. And on top of that, the fact that you would fight again makes me as a fan really, really happy, because I'd love to see you fight again. This conversation, I'm like a fanboy right now. I'm so happy to hear this.
I appreciate that, man. It really means a lot to me, that anybody even supports me, and it's been such a long time. It's like, I haven't even, most people who old. So, a lot of it's gone by, whole decades gone by. So,
Yeah.
and the thing is like I said, by leaving the sport, so a lot of people don't know that right at the end of my career, I had so many health problems. It was bad. So I had bulging discs, the C5, 6, 7, and 8. I had impingement syndrome. I had lower lumbar fast syndrome. I had spinal stenosis. I had torn my retina. I had superior oblique muscle palsy and third cranial nerve palsy. I had all these things, and I also had a stroke. People didn't know that either. So all this was hidden, and I had all that stuff happen. And since I retired, I've done nothing but went to the doctors. I had everything done. I had my eyes fixed. I had laser surgery done on my eyes. I had everything fixed. And so for the past 6 years, all I've done is been religiously on my diet. I've been doing everything how I would have. If I could have trained me back then, this is how I would have done it. And, and because I am a trainer and because I have to look the part, nobody wants to train with somebody, who's fat and out of shape. So I really trained hard, and the best way to make these guys that I train believe in me and that I can show them stuff that works is by getting in there and beating their ass. So, if I get at 48, get in there and smack them around a little bit, even though I can only do it normally for 1 or 2 rounds, and then I get a little tired, it's good enough that they say, hey, if this old guy can do it, then I can do it. So, and that's what I would do. I would, if I decide to do this, I'll do it for me. That's it. And it will give me not quite a year earlier or closer to my retirement, but it will get me. I have my plan all out and everything. I got my Roth IRA and I have a Roth 401k that I'm dumping money into all the time, and my savings is good, and and this would just kind of booster it, and get me closer to, I just bought a big plot of land near the ocean here too, so I've got 3 acres of land, and I'm going to build a home there to retire on and hunt wild boar, pig, and stuff out there, and just
nice.
live off the land, like a crazy old guy.
The American dream. I love it. Awesome, man. Well, as I said, UFC 93, that's where it all began for me. I met you there. I met a lot of the fighters. You were all really cool. Even Chris Lytle. I love watching your post-fight press conference with Chris. It's like the freaking circus. I love that. You were in... Oh, man. Absolutely, man. I love the way you guys handled yourself in the post-fight press conference, and that was the seed that was planted for me. I'm like, I thought these were all barbaric assholes, but apparently these guys are friends and they went in and fought. But then you did the seminar in Waterford. I came down to that. Our gym came to the Waterford guys. They were all really cool. That was really cool. You were super forthcoming and very approachable. There was no ego. But when I talk about my idols and someone who I would look up to as an influence, the first person I talk about is always you.
Thanks, Dave, man. It really means a lot to me. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Awesome, man. I want to thank you for joining us. If you've got anything you want to promote or send it my way, please let me know. I'll put it on this and it can be shared to your bigger following than mine.
Well, I'll let you know when if this thing gets signed or not, and we'll just go from there. I'll give you all the information. I'll find where it can be streamed and all that stuff. So
sounds good, man. Thank you very much again, man. I really appreciate it. Awesome.
Anytime for you, buddy.
Rocking. Awesome. So that was Marcus Davis, former UFC fighter, retired. Great conversation, great guy. As I said, very forthcoming when I saw him at UFC 93. Again at the seminar in Waterford, and now I'm a nobody. I've got very few following on social media, and I just reached out and I asked, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And there he was, just like, yeah, sure. He sent me his schedule. I'm like, wow, I don't know how this is going to work. But they, like, awesome people, they just make time for you. That's how you know someone is on your side and a good person. Even when they're super busy, they make time for you. That's the key. So that's all I really got to say on this one, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll try and get more guests on with the similar caliber. And if you want me to reach out to a specific fighter and have a conversation that way, let me know in the comments. Again, please, I need you guys to subscribe. I need to build this. I need to grow it so I can reach out to, I don't know, the big celebrities in Hollywood coming on CMA podcast to talk about what they're doing in their next movie. I don't know, Tom Cruise and the like. We'll see. That's the goal. May not be the goal. I wish you guys a very pleasant rest of the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be in touch again. Take care. Bye-bye.